Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And Logan, what an incredible series we have been treated to in the Western Conference semifinals before the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. We've been saying these are the two best teams out west. Gotten to the point where we've been saying these are the two best teams in the league. But when Minnesota took that 2-0 lead, I will admit, I thought that it was a very, very difficult path back for Denver, which it obviously was. But I thought, as highly as I've thought of this team for so long, it was very unlikely that they would be able to come back and win 4 out of 5 to win this series. But clearly, the hardest part of pulling off that feat was going and stealing 2 in Minnesota. Not stealing, winning, because that's what Denver did. They controlled both these games. We've already talked about game 3, of course, which was the blowout. But game 4, Logan, another really impressive win. What do you take away from this for Denver?
It's not Jover. I was convinced it was Jover, Carson. I was ready to take my shirt off and wave the white flag, man. I was ready to give in as much faith as I had in the Denver Nuggets. Dude, Nikola Jokic completely controlled this basketball game, man. This is what I expect out of the MVP of the league, dude. 35-7 on 15 and 26 from the field. He gets the Nuggets over the finish line, 14 fourth quarter points. I just loved like his control and his aggressiveness, man, from the jump in this game. Like, this is what star players do, man. They take over. They're not going to let the game slip out of their grasp and just let the series go away. He did it. The Murray-Jokic pick and roll is unstoppable, Carson, when both of these guys get going. Like, it's such a hard action to guard, dude. And it generates so many great looks and so many easy baskets for the Nuggets down the stretch, man. And even down the way, like if Jokic wasn't scoring too, dude, he'd be setting somebody up. That nasty, last kick, that no look to Gordon, beautiful kick from Jokic. And it's just what we should come to expect. Like, Jokic has always got the answers, man, at what the defense throws at him, it seems like. The pick and roll was going tonight. He was dissecting double teams. Like, Jokic did what he always does, man. He ate on Gobert in single coverage. He didn't shoot insanely well from behind the arc, but he does hit one big clutch three. Like, every action is just amplified with this guy, Carson. If it's a pick and roll, if it's a dribble handoff, if it's a post up, it's all better going through Jokic because he is so dominant, man. Like, he just completely controlled this basketball game. I want to give a big shout out to Jamal Murray too, dude. Does enough. 19, 5, and 8 in this one. Good playmaking. And the guy I want to give a big shout out to is Aaron Gordon, dude, and what he was able to do in non-Jokic minutes too, man. Like, the fact that they survived those couple of stretches at the end of the first half and then in the third quarter where Jokic gets his third foul. I thought this was crucial to Denver getting over the finish line in this one, man. Minnesota has to win those minutes, Carson. They just have to. Like, that's invaluable time on the floor, and this is not a super deep Nuggets bench. But Gordon took over. Like, the point Gordon we got in those non-Jokic minutes was firing me up, man. That drive on Mike Conley, he hits Brown on the cut. The next possession, he strips McDaniels on the sloppy handle. Turns that one into a post touch to an easy Holiday three. Crucial. And big shout out to Justin Holiday hitting some big shots too. And so to Christian Brown for good minutes. Big shout out to all of those guys. And then this collective defense too, Carson. I was super impressed with like their rotations. I'm kind of disappointed in myself a little bit, Carson, that I was so ready to give up on like this championship team. I don't know. I think I counted them out a little too early, dude. This has been a great response on both ends. Like, I've been really impressed with them defensively, but offensively, Jokic controlled this game. The role players stepped up. I'm just kind of mad at myself that I was so ready to cave in, dude, that I was so ready to give up on the Nuggets. I think it was a little premature. I think this one goes 7. Right now, I'm leaning Nuggets, but I still think it's super evenly matched, man. I think it goes the distance.
I would be surprised if Denver didn't win at this point. And it's funny because after game 3, I just started to get my feeling like, man, I think that they're going to come back and win this series. And once they were up double digits after the first quarter of this game, I didn't want to be irrational. I didn't want to go out and tweet something I would later regret, but I was just like, yeah, I think this team is going to win the title. I think that game 2, as dominant a defensive performance as it was from Minnesota, we saw that extreme level of physicality wasn't allowed again going forward. And also, it was just uncharacteristic how much Denver was thrown off their game for their own reasons as well. Like, of course, it was an all-time defensive performance, but we have consistently seen them in games 3 and 4 make much more deliberate decisions, take much better care of the basketball, find these very effective counters to the ball pressure, whether it's Well, Jamal Murray just getting quicker, first of all, which has obviously been a huge factor, him recovering from his calf strain, him finding his shot making. But if it's Aaron Gordon bringing the ball up the floor to alleviate the impact of that ball pressure, they have just been absolutely masterful offensively. And far and away, the driving factor in that is Nikola Jokic. Like, this was an absolute masterclass, Logan. And he came out of this game looking for blood, man. He bullied Cat on a possession. He bullied Naz Reid. But to me, the most impressive part of this game from Jokic is just the intellectual dominance, the masterful manipulation of this Timberwolves defense that we know is the best in the league, that I still believe is the best that we've seen in quite some time, Logan. I haven't moved off of that. I just think the Nuggets are doing what they do as one of the best offenses ever, as what we've been calling a top 3 offense this century. There are so many moments in this game where Jokic just masterfully manipulates defenders. First quarter, fakes a lob to Aaron Gordon off of a pocket pass so that Gobert has to recover to take away that lob, because we know that that is a 95% look if you aren't able to take it away, which most defenses aren't. And so he gets an uncontested floater. Pump fakes. After Naz Reid overplays him on a cut, he sort of fumbles the catch a little bit. It's not a great pass, but he waits. He's patient. He knows that he is going to get Naz Reid jumping, and boom, that's 2 easy free throws. Last possession of the first quarter. Pump fakes Naz out of bounds, gets a step on him on a drive, but knows he's not going to get a clean look off of that. But then he just creates the separation that he needs by, again, using a fake. Then you think about what he does in the fourth quarter, just completely dominating this game down the stretch. He has the possession where he gets fouled and it looks like he's going to kick out, and he's able to adjust midair and put up that touch shot. He fakes the pass to the corner, and as you mentioned, dumps it off to Aaron Gordon with a no look. To me, the most impressive, though, or maybe not the most impressive, but just the culmination of this incredible offensive night from him cerebrally, was when they started sending doubles his way more, and he got matched up with Ant, so obviously they have to double in that situation. He passes out, resets, knows that the double is coming. So he fakes the pass back out to KCP, spins off, and gets a floater. Like, he was just in complete control of this game, and it didn't matter what coverage Minnesota threw at him. It didn't matter what level of effort and intensity they played with, their length, their size. None of these things mattered. He was just completely going to outfox them no matter what. Nobody could do anything with him in any coverage, and that's what you expect from, in my opinion, the greatest offensive player ever. And without a doubt, a tier 1 offensive player in NBA history. And I think doubling him down the stretch was the right thing to do, because that's what we saw was by far most effective in game 2. You just force the ball out of his hands and you make other guys beat you, and you make them deal with your overwhelming athleticism on the perimeter and also on the back line and help. But when he sees that coming and he gives you a bucket anyways, it's just a moment where you have to be like, man, this is one of the greatest players to ever play this game. I thought that he was absolutely sensational in this game. I thought he was excellent last game too, but the assertiveness in this one took it up another level. He's also been so improved defensively, has been so much more active with his hands there, has 10 stocks over these last 2 games now. But it is very much like the synergy of this Nuggets offense when everybody is locked in, when everybody is playing up to their potential that we're seeing now. You have to give props to Jamal Murray, because when he is nails as a pull-up shooter, when he is quick enough to actually get separation coming around those screens, when Jokic is setting incredible screens, it changes everything. And we saw that in game 3, because the typical strategy for this series, which we saw in game 1, was to just allow Jamal to take those mid-range and floater looks, right? To apply back pressure, to trust that he wasn't going to challenge Rudy Gobert, and to have Jokic's defender stick with him on the roll. And that was an incredibly effective strategy to take away the 2-man game. That doesn't matter if he is actually springing free off of those screens, and if he is just making those mid-range looks, and if he's able to actually spring three for pull-up threes, which wasn't happening in the first game because he's getting more space coming around those screens, and all of that is happening. So now you have to have the screen defender show, which opens up the pocket passes to Jokic. He gets 2 easy floaters down the stretch in this game. Gobert can't do anything with that. It's automatic. But it's not just even Jamal, it's the collective shooting. Like, there's instances out of the 2-man game where maybe like Jokic finds Aaron Gordon in the dunker spot or whatever, and he moves the ball to a shooter, or just throughout this game, Jokic is dotting up cutters. Gobert steps up to help on those guys. They kick it to the corner, and everybody is knocking down their shots. It's just a complete offensive masterclass. And Aaron Gordon was heroic in this game, dude. He was out of this world. The ball handling is so valuable. Again, to negate the ball pressure that Minnesota wants to apply to Jamal Murray, which we saw some in game 3 as well, but also just his ability to bully smaller defenders or to get a step on bigger defenders and get into the teeth of this defense. When Jokic was off the floor, that was essential. He gets a huge drive and kick to Justin Holiday when it's like, oh boy, the offense is starting to maybe spiral a little bit with Jokic off the floor, and he just can't miss from the corner. And that is absolutely vital to this Nuggets offense, especially because now he's playing as a floor spacer more than he's playing in the dunker spot. And Rudy Gobert's entire objective in this series is to be disruptive as a roamer, which requires that Aaron Gordon is ineffective as a three-point shooter. So the second that you have to stay attached to him, the second that you have to rotate over him and he can make a swing pass to a more consistent shooter, but you're not just going to let Aaron Gordon take these threes the way he's shooting them right now, like it changes all of the dynamics for this Denver offense. And then he just makes some like, what the hell shots in this game. Like the bailout turnaround over Gobert in the fourth quarter when the shot clock is winding down. And I think it was Christian Brown who just like throws an entry pass to Gordon and like he's challenged off the catch and you're just like, dude, this is not where you want this possession going. And he still gets a bucket. He had several mid-range fadeaways in this game, made all of his free throws, didn't have a ton of them in this game, but just like was everything you needed from him offensively. So versatile there as well. And still had like a couple catches off of passes to the dunker spot and gave you big finishes. And then defensively guarded Ant better than anybody in this game and guarded Cat better than anybody in this game. Like legitimately was able to stick with Ant on a couple drives, was able to stifle Cat when he tried to get downhill, when he tried to attack off of post-ups, where he's been so successful offensively throughout this series. Just such a unique, versatile player who was amazing in last year's title run. Like clearly the third best player on this team in last year's title run. And MPJ was the hero of the first round, but Aaron Gordon had a lot of amazing moments there as well. What he did on the offensive glass, what he did defensively against Anthony Davis when he drew that matchup, his massive game where he scored 29 points. And now over these last few games of this series has been consistently assertive offensively, has found his shot making in a huge way, and has taken up those ball handling duties when they've needed anybody else who can break this defense down off the dribble. Like that was a problem that the Nuggets just lacked ball handling outside of Jamal Murray, who couldn't separate himself. Aaron Gordon has changed that dynamic. Just legitimately crucial stuff from him in a really outstanding Denver win.
And when everybody's on, Denver feels unstoppable, right? That's the thing about this Denver machine is that it is contingent on everybody else getting everything going because it puts the defense in constant hell, right? It all starts with Gobert, like how you talk about him helping off of Gordon. When you get Gobert involved in that pick and roll action with Murray and Jokic, and it's like he's making a decision. And the point is that when Denver and everything else is going on, they're going to make you pay for whatever decision you make. If you leave Gordon off, he's going to make that shot. If you help off Murray too much, Jokic is going to hit that floater. Like it's just Denver has all the counters when everything's going, but he is the hero. And it's a luxury, dude, that Denver has a player this good in this kind of role. Like that's what I want to emphasize too. Is like, yeah, Gordon may be the third or fourth guy any given night, but he is capable of doing these things. And he was, dude. He was imperative to that run. And he's imperative to this game. Also, what I think is imperative to this game too, Carson. What did you think about the end of that first half? Like, I mean, I think that completely swings this game, right?
For sure. Insane. Absolutely insane 8-0 run down the half.
Yeah, I mean, like, Minnesota was really getting this momentum. And I want to give a huge shout out, one to Anthony Edwards, who I just think kept the Wolves in this game. Like the Timberwolves he almost scores over half of their points, almost half of their points in the first half, 23 of 49 to be exact. Like Cat is completely crapping his pants, just dog water from in the first half. Nobody else is giving you anything. Gobert, Conley, Selling, like he's keeping them in this game. And it really felt like they were surging at the right time. McDaniels hits that off the dribble mid-range pull up. It looks like they're going to cut this thing down. And then, I mean, Denver took their soul a little bit. I felt bad for them, dude. Like they were getting back in this game. And Jamal hits that soul crusher from half court. You get the MPJ dunk. It's 5 points in 2 seconds. They completely erase everything that Minnesota was doing at the end of that first half. Those are huge minutes that you just can't have, man. I really think that helped swing this game in the favor of Denver.
Crucial, absolutely. And it was impressive how Minnesota was able to hang in the game from that point forward, right? Like, it's not like they were deflated by it. You would think, oh boy, how do you come back from that? But Ant certainly kept coming, dude. My God. And they closed the gap from that point forward. But yeah, that's a huge 8-point swing that ultimately they just don't have the margin in a game where Denver's shooting like this, where everybody is on like this, where Jokic is this fully assertive, dominant version of himself. And Jamal got going there. Like, maybe it was separate of that. It was funny how Reggie was talking on the broadcast about how, like, oh, he hits a 55-footer. That's what gets him his momentum. But then he came out the second half and he was aggressive. Jokic springs him free with a big screen and he gets a clean look. He hits a beautiful leaning mid-range. He hits a step back three. Like, he starts getting to his pull-up threes. And then again, down the stretch, it's Jamal's playmaking that is the biggest thing. It's the defensive attention that he's drawing and the fact that they have to play that pick and roll honestly now, and it just creates better opportunities for Jokic. So he gives you 19 points, 8 assists. It's not a monster box score performance, but it is so drastically different from what we saw in the first 2 games. And again, he gives you some of that tough shot making when you need it most. But on the flip side, Ant is unbelievable, dude. And as incredible as he has been throughout this playoff run, averaging 32 points per game on 67% true shooting, Logan, just completely unfathomable. This was the best game that he's played. Like, just could not miss from 3. The pull-up threes were absolutely lethal if it was in transition, if it was in isolation. The rare instances where the Nuggets played drop, he hits a pull-up 3. And what was so incredible to me was the combination of that pull-up shooting and the downhill pressure that we know is special, right? In isolation and in transition. Like, he's just too big, too quick, too athletic for anybody to stay in front of him, anybody to keep him away from the rim. His finishing around the rim was incredible. We know that Jokic isn't a good pure rim protector, but you still have to finish against size and length when he's in there. And Ant was doing that so consistently in this game. And then some of the tough shot making, like he hits that tough post fade that he banks in, the step through. The man is just putting on shot making clinic after shot making clinic throughout these playoffs, carrying the Timberwolves. You think about how much of a slog game 1 of this series is, and he has, what was it, 20 of their 44 first half points in that game or whatever it was. Like, he has just consistently carried a load that, as great as the guy is, you couldn't have expected him to coming into this run. No matter how high you were on Anthony Edwards, he has surpassed that. And it's just so frustrating because you look at what's going on around him and it's like he was able to still give you buckets out of pick and roll in some really impressive ways. Like, whenever they switch that action, Christian Braun, he bullied. MPJ, he gives a tough bucket. There were a couple instances where Jokic is hedging properly, but Ant is just so quick that he gets around the corner and he gets downhill, gets by him anyways. But the biggest problem for Minnesota's offense in this game, and what made Ant have to turn more to isolation, and what made ultimately Denver's pick and roll defense so effective, was just the limitations of Rudy Gobert. And we talked about this last game, but the ability for Denver to hedge and to send these soft traps at Ant, to get 2 bodies on him and then tag Gobert with the roller and have Jokic recover. And you just know that, like, Ant doesn't have the faith to make that pass to Gobert, because if he is dealing with MPJ as a low man, whoever it is, like, he doesn't have the necessary footwork. He doesn't have the necessary touch. Like, it's just going to result in a sort of spastic possession. And that's what happens in the first half of this game. Like, Gobert has 1 point. He has 3 turnovers. So you're either not getting him the ball off the roll, which means, okay, great, we've just reset your offense. We've taken time off the clock. We have prevented you from getting Ant an advantage out of pick and roll, or it's we're giving the ball to Rudy Gobert and he is just fumbling this situation. And in the second half, they started feeding him more because I think they realized, like, look, we have to at least try getting him the ball, or else we're just accepting that we aren't getting any advantages against these coverages. And also they got a couple, or at least one proper 2-on-1 playing drop, and then Conley threw a lob to Gobert. When he had a clear mismatch, they started getting him the ball and he draws a foul there. But then on a crucial possession, he tries to post up Jokic and he pulls the chair out under him. And it's just like, Rudy, my guy, like, the lack of offensive skill is still such a clear problem. And that's the thing with playoff Gobert. People have often keyed in on, oh, his defense doesn't translate, whatever. Rudy's defense has always translated. Rudy is one of the most dominant interior defenders we've ever seen, but he's also an excellent big defending in space. The problem has been his inability to punish mismatches offensively and his inability to now deliver offensively as a roller in a situation like this. And it just makes Minnesota so much easier to guard. At the same time, Karl-Anthony Towns absolutely has to be held accountable, because he was the other big letdown in this game. Like, he was just failing to attack mismatches, because you have that stretch in the first half where it's like, oh boy, Ant is just getting buckets on KCP, right? He's too big. He's shooting over him without resistance. We got to put Aaron Gordon on him. And Cat should just absolutely obliterate those looks, because we've seen he's been a very effective mismatch attacker in this postseason. And when he has Kentavious Caldwell-Pope on him, those should be buckets, right? He should just be too physical, too strong. And instead, back-to-back possessions, he tries to go at him. The Nuggets play some good help, and then KCP strips him outright. And so he's not able to punish them for that. And then Aaron Gordon, who I was really shocked by how much success Cat was able to find on Aaron Gordon through the first couple games of this series, because last season in the playoff series between these two teams, he wasn't able to. And I was like, if anybody has a 4 who can guard Cat, it is going to be Aaron Gordon, with his size and strength and athleticism. And in this game, AG won that battle convincingly. Like, Cat just couldn't move him off his spots. He's taking tough runners. He's taking tough shots out of post-ups. MPJ guarded him well off of a switch, drew an offensive foul in one spot, forced Cat into the push-off because he wasn't winning the battle physically, swarmed him in another spot, got a clean block. So that's what's really, really rough for Minnesota in this game, is that you got special Ant. You've gotten special Ant all postseason, but you got the best version of Ant that you have. And it is ultimately the offensive limitations of the supporting cast, which was always the red flag with this team. There's never a question that this was the best defense in the league, that they were going to defend Denver better than anybody else. Now, games 1 and 2, they defended Denver exceptionally well, and I certainly didn't expect that. But the key difference really for Minnesota throughout this run was that they were the number 1 playoff offense through 6 games, the number 1 playoff offense through the first round, and then they were dominant again there through the first couple games of this series, and the bottom just fell out there in this one. And that is a major concern going forward, because Denver has gotten comfortable with you to the point where, yeah, you're still defending really well, but the all-time great offense is now winning out against the all-time great defense. And you need to have the offensive punch to compete. And outside of Anthony Edwards, they just weren't close to that in this game.
I mean, Ant has consistently dominated in the half court in a way I did not expect him to in this run. Like, that's what gives me faith in Minnesota, that if we can just get slightly better versions of these guys, they're going to be in these games. Like, I just have such faith in Anthony Edwards doing his thing. I think he's going to be the best player in the world, Carson. I'm so confident in him. Like, I don't think this is the baton moment, from Jokic to Ant. I don't think it's going to be. I think Denver's going to win this series, but Ant is going to be the best player in the world, I think. Either him or Wemby, and that's going to be the throne.
Wemby is the challenge.
I think they go back and forth, but it's ridiculous. 44 points in this one, man. This is his 5th 30-point playoff game in these playoffs. And the one possession I want to highlight is that one at the end of this game where he just completely explodes past Jamal Murray and gets that second burst of the 2-hand jam. It made me stand up off my couch. Like, did I see that right? Is that right? Like,
incredible.
The combination, like you mentioned, of downhill pressure and pull-up jump shooting, and what we've seen this run in the half court. The other one, dude, he's drawing doubles, and he's not even like looking to pass out. He's just saying, I'm going to bend the corner and I'm going to get to the rack. Now, it's a double-edged sword, because there are some possessions where there's a guy wide open on the weak side. And
he's got to make the skip passes.
Anthony, swing it.
Yeah, he just has to be able to make those skip passes, because that's the thing. We can talk about how Gobert isn't able to score over the low man. He's not skilled enough there. But like, this coverage is designed to get a body on Gobert. At least like he should be better there. But the one thing that it is going to concede is the skip pass. And that's a spot where Ant hasn't been good enough as a playmaker. That is the one thing you can hold against him from this playoff run. Dominant as a pull-up shooter, like unfathomable. Dominant as a downhill force. Dominant from the mid-range. Dominant defensively. I mean, he has a couple of amazing plays there. But you think about what Devin Booker was able to do last year between the Suns and the Nuggets. Like, that was what was so outstanding to me. Of course, his pull-up shooting was out of this world, but he was consistently making those skip passes, and those are always going to be there. And so if the corner shooters can knock down those looks, or they attack a closeout when you run them off the line, like, that's creating an advantage. And Ant hasn't done that. He's been so great that, I mean, he's been able to dominate in spite of that, but I would like to see him be better as a playmaker in those situations going forward.
I mean, the beauty of it is Anthony Edwards is still just the ripe age of 22. So, I mean, he's going to get better at that as he goes along, right? Like, that's the one area I agree, though. He could get better. And the final thing I want to mention on the Gobert point, where You're talking about pick and rolls with Anthony Edwards. The frustrating thing about that, too, is when the Nuggets are sending doubles at Ant, too, and you've got Gobert as the roll man, what that's inadvertently doing with your offense is sending 3 guys to the paint on Ant every time. Like, they don't care about Gobert at all. They can divert all of that attention to Ant. It just makes his life so much harder when he's on the floor. I do wonder if it's worth it giving more minutes to Nas, man.
Yeah, Gobert has been a real liability offensively in this series. And you mentioned like just the congestion. One of those crucial turnovers, the second to last one before they just throw the inbound to Jamal at the end of the first half, Ant is trying to get downhill. Gobert is just sort of aimlessly rolling, just sort of la-di-da-di-da, drifting into the paint, and he gets immediately in Ant's path on his drive, and Ant dribbles it off his foot. Just a lot of costly stuff from him offensively, and that's where game 2, this offense was just more dynamic. There was shooting everywhere. Everybody could put the ball on the floor. Everybody could attack a closeout. And Gobert does have to be held responsible for his shortcomings there. I do want to give props to one Minnesota Timberwolf other than Anthony Edwards, and that is Mike Conley, who I thought provided some really valuable shot making and playmaking, particularly in the second half of this game. Also, Naz Reid stepped up and made some big shots in this game when he was off last one. But Denver's always going to have the more replicable offensive formula. They're just the better offense, but the margin can't be this wide. I do want to give props to some more Denver Nuggets, though, Logan, and you briefly touched on this, but the Denver bench, this was the biggest red flag. This was the biggest concern about this team coming into the postseason, and they have consistently played above expectations, and this game was a really impressive instance of that. Justin Holiday has been great throughout this series, dude. Like, has just been consistently engaged defensively and has been shooting the lights out. And Christian Braun gives you huge minutes in this game, absolutely huge 25 minutes. And we know that he is a guy who, when he is confident, when he is comfortable, can swing games with his athleticism, with how he runs the floor in transition. He's an instinctual cutter. He's inconsistent as a shooter. But again, when he is willing to step into those looks and knocking them down, he's an impact player. And then defensively, he's athletic and he's always going to be engaged and he's going to compete. He's going to fight for 50-50 balls. Like, when his shot is falling, when he feels comfortable in these situations offensively, like, he's just a dude who you want on the floor. We saw it in the finals last year, and you see it again in this one. Those dudes giving you 21 combined points. Vital bench production in this game. Vital bench production. Because as you mentioned, like, the Nuggets did well in the non-Jokic minutes. They're +5 in the non-Jokic minutes. And especially when KCP and MPJ were both just pretty much non-factors offensively in this game, didn't get a lot of shots up, either of them, but KCP didn't shoot well in this game. Like, they just needed that supplemental production, and the bench provided it. And I've been encouraged by what we've seen. Like, if you want to talk about this Denver team being battle-tested, they have been battle-tested in a lot of ways. And Jamal has started to pull through. Aaron Gordon with this shooting, we'll see to what extent it's sustainable, but he is making this incredible high-level impact. Jokic has reached the level you expect from the guy who's clearly the best player alive. But this bench is just playing really well right now. And that was the thing that I would have been most uncertain about.
Yeah, I think you give Holiday way more minutes, man. And if Brown's going to be hitting his shots like this, I think you give him some burn too. The last guy, I don't want to end this segment on a negative note, but I do want to point the finger one more time at Karl-Anthony Towns. I am just super disappointed by him in this game, and I think if they got any kind of offensive punch out of him, and it wasn't even, Carson, it wasn't even the fact that, like, you're just missing shots or you're having an off night or something. It was the way that Karl-Anthony Towns is playing. Like, what really, it was just ugly too. Like, there was no bag work. There was no... Karl-Anthony Towns' greatest strength as a player is the fact that he is so freaking tall that he can just shoot over the top of everybody. And watching him try to work in the mid-range on these guys and just backing them down and pounding the rock into the earth and then just trying to brute force his way, one, it's just ugly. Two, you got some fouls there. Like, you're trying to barrel through the guy every possession. I just thought it was an ugly game, and I think it's a stylistical, like, way that Karl-Anthony Towns shouldn't be playing. Like, Cat, you're a great shooter.
That's how it always is. Yeah, but when he attacks mismatches like Logan, it's never pretty. It's just a question of, is he able to win the physicality battle? Is his touch shot making on? Or is he getting stood up on these drives? Is he the one who is getting out physicaled? And then is he missing those tough shots in the lane? And for the most part in these playoffs, he's been pretty good in those spots. He's been very efficient as a post-up player. Wasn't the case in this one. He just got outplayed there.
there's little things I just think Cat could do, like Jokic-esque, that would open up, like more DHOs, man, more screens where you're popping. Just like he could weaponize his skill set more. And I just thought it was really inefficient too. The way he's pounding, those are bad possessions, man. Basically all of them. Where can we reset? Can you get the ball out to a ball handler and set me a screen and roll or something? It was just a really ugly game. And if Cat pulls his weight at all, I feel like the Timberwolves can win this game.
Definitely would have been more competitive. We have an interesting conversation developing in the chat here. I want to shout out Stuff to Consider for making a generous donation to the Nerd Sesh Fund. Appreciate that. There's a lot of Ant versus Luka conversation going on. I presume because you said you think Ant will be the best player in the league, he or Wemby. Those are clearly the top three to me. Boy, Ant is making a hell of a case. Like, Luka's the better basketball player at this stage. Of course, he's older. Ant is clearly playing better throughout this playoff run. Like, there's a massive gap between the two of them, but also Luka is just clearly not 100% in terms of health. His shot is totally off. Ant's jump shot is at a level that, like, is unbelievable how much better it was than this regular season. I still think Luka is one of the best offensive players ever. He's just not playing like that at all right now, but like, he's done it enough times in the postseason before where we can give him his just due for that. Who do you think is more likely to be the best guy in the world going forward?
I think next season, Anthony Edwards is going to be the best player in the world. Like,
that's insane. Whoa. I don't think that. What?
I mean, I think he's could be. Yeah. The tangible development we've seen out of the mid-range, bro, that's an easy shot for Ant now. The little bank off the glass, the turnaround fades. I think next year Ant could do it. I'm serious.
I think that's insane. I think Jokic is on another level than Ant. When he is at any normal level as a pull-up shooter, and like, he's doing it night after night after night. I'm not trying to discredit that. It's just an insane run. And we watch these 8 games and we act like it's equivalent to 82 because the stage is so much bigger. But it's like, bro, he's not a 60% effective field goal percentage pull-up jump shooter. You know who isn't that? Steph Curry. You know who isn't that? Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. Nobody on the planet is that. And that's where I don't want to be overly reactionary. I don't want to say anything to knock Ant.
Don't get me wrong.
I just think to say next year he could be the best player on the planet, like, that's too much for me. That's too much. He's so special. He absolutely has that ceiling down the line. But when peak Jokic is still doing peak Jokic stuff and Ant is going to be 23 years old, I'm not there with you, man. It's just the replicability of it. It's like Jokic has done this every single night when he wants to for 2 years. Ant has been doing it for 8 games.
Look, I'm an excitable young fella, you know?
You are an excitable young fella.
But I also think that there are just things that Ant can do that nobody else on the planet can, man. I've never really seen a guy that you can send 2 defenders at him and he's just going to bend the corner and get to the hoop, unstoppable style, where if you put a guy who's flat-footed on him, he's going to explode past him to the basket. And I do think we have seen his mid-range, like this pull-up growth, I think is real. You're right, Carson. We're never going to see a guy shoot like this lights out for mid-range, but we have seen legitimate growth there.
Absolutely.
With the skill, like, I don't know. I think that Ant is going to be for sure top 5 next season. I'm ready to bank on that. And I think it's going to be a race. His two-way ability too, man, what he can do on the perimeter. Obviously, it doesn't equate to what a big man can do on the interior, but it's still super, super valuable how he can take on the best assignment night after night. And I think next year we're going to see. You're right. And I think next year we're going to see his pull-up jump shooting get better. I think we're going to see his playmaking get better, and he just has athletic traits. That's the key. That's the key difference that I want to emphasize and why my faith in Ant is so heavy. Shea is an incredible athlete. Ant just has better tools. Luka is not an incredible athlete. Ant clearly clears there. Luka's way better as a playmaker and as a decision maker and dissecting defenses, but Ant has those athletic advantages, and that's the final component of why I think why I put him there is I don't think I'm ever going to have to worry about Anthony Edwards in the playoffs in terms of health and conditioning. Luka, I feel like I have to worry about.
But you're talking about these guys, Logan. That's the future. The present is Nikola Jokic. And
it is.
The difference there is just like literal offensive perfection. Jokic doesn't need to have an unconscious pull-up shooting run. He doesn't need to have an unconscious 3-point shooting run. Like last year he did. And cool. That was the best offensive playoff run ever, in my opinion. This year, his 3 ball is off in the postseason. It's off in this game, but he is going to manipulate you He is going to make the perfect decision every single time. He is going to destroy every coverage, either as a scorer and a passer, in a way that is so sustainable. That's just why we talk about him the way that we do. And I just feel like you're getting a little bit excited here.
I don't know, man. I just have that level of faith in Ant. I believe in Ant like that. That guy is a freaking superhero. Like he's
amazing.
He just does things on the basketball court that nobody else in the league can. And the key factor that he has over those guys is just the downhill pressure. Nobody can exert downhill pressure or get to, and he's so good at finishing through contact. I think next year we're going to see it fully realized. I mean, maybe I'm early. Maybe I'm a couple years early, but I think next year we could see it fully realized. Ant's a freak, man. Ant is a freak.
He is. There's no debating that. I love Ant, but like, Nikola Jokic creates the best shot quality possession to possession of any basketball player in NBA history, in my opinion. You're talking about Ant's downhill pressure. You
and
get
Ant's
Jokic
almost
the ball
going
anywhere on
with
the
this
post
guy,
up.
man.
Yeah, he is right now because he's having an
team.
unfathomable pull-up shooting run. No, he is going toe-to-toe with him right now. But it's a question of what do you think is sustainable? Is it Jokic who's not even shooting at the level we normally expect from him, or Ant who is shooting about 30% above what you normally expect from him?
Let me get your gauge then. So how many guys are you taking over Ant, like right now heading into next year? Because I'm only probably taking, for me, it's Jokic, it's Luka, probably Giannis. And even that I'm debating. Like those are probably the only three guys at this point that I would confidently take over Ant. And Shai's on the fence for me too. I'm debating Shai. That's why I say he's concrete, like stamp top 5, but I'm debating him with most of those guys. Who are you taking over him?
He's absolutely playing at a top 5 level right now. I would take Jokic, Luka, and Giannis all above him. Shai, the body of work is so much more consistent and proven, and is clearly playing at a higher level right now. I'll give you an answer at the end of this playoff run. How about that?
People are saying Embiid. I'm not taking Embiid, man.
That's tough, dude. Joel is always so difficult to rank. Like, Logan, I just want you to consider. I want you to take a deep breath and consider what Devin Booker did in last year's playoffs. Numbers we hadn't seen since Michael Jordan, scoring, production, and efficiency.
I understand.
What Donovan Mitchell did in 2020 and 2021. Like, sometimes this just happens. And there's a reason that's generally
a different
guys
athlete than those guys, man. Ant's a completely different athlete than those guys. And that's
Logan, but you're not talking about like just taking a leap. You're talking about, okay, I think this guy's going to be better than Nikola Jokic next year. I think this guy's going to be better.
I think he's going to be better than. I think Jokic is. That's why I said the baton. I think you're looking at 1 and 2 right now, and Jokic is 1, and nobody's going to take that title from him. I'm not trying to discredit the golden boy. I'm not trying to take anything away from Jokic whatsoever. I'm still taking him. That's why they win this game. Like I'm not taking.
Honestly, I mean, I guess, but really the supporting cast was the difference in this game. Ant did everything that he needed. He absolutely went toe-to-toe with Jokic. It's not about how they are playing literally within this playoff run. Ant has been the best player in this playoff run.
Anthony Edwards is the most built different human being I've ever seen in my life. And that's what I'm banking on.
He is built different. It's incredible how he delivers on the biggest stage. Like, I'm huge on Ant, dude. Huge. I just think, again, we have to keep things a little bit in perspective, but he's doing this night after night. It's absolutely phenomenal, the level that he's playing at. And if he's not one of the top 3 guys you would take to build a franchise, I think that you're wrong. Earlier in the year, we had a debate between him and SGA. I thought it was very close. I was leaning SGA. I would flip on that now. I think the ceiling that Ant has, even if next year he's not the better player, right? Even because this pull-up shooting comes down to earth or whatever, like what he can be because of the physical dominance, because of the defensive ceiling that I do think is clearly higher than SGA's, even though he's a very good defensive player as well. It's incredible. It's incredible. Like, of course, he's going to be one of the faces of this league for a long time. And this was like potentially an ascending moment, dude. If the guys around him pick up the slack, right? He did everything the Timberwolves could have ever asked of him to win this game. But Denver was incredible. And game 2, they just did not respond like the team that we know them to be. They got their asses kicked. They were overwhelmed physically, and they just didn't know how to handle it. Minnesota threw their best punch, and Denver just kind of folded under the pressure of that in game 2. And to then come back so calm, so composed, with such a consistent offensive execution, with your 2 best players doing everything that you need from them, and to just bring the fight, to bring the intensity from the jump in a way that they hadn't at any point in the Lakers series, that they had in the first 2 games against Minnesota. Like somebody said on the broadcast today, oh, I think that game 2 ass kicking was exactly what Denver needed. And like, it's tough to even wrap your head around that, because it's like you went down 2-0 to a great team and you just got absolutely destroyed. But legitimately, like, they are just playing with a level of focus right now that they hadn't previously. And I don't think that's just because of game 2. And I think Jamal getting healthier is absolutely huge, but they look like the juggernaut that we know them to be, like one of the best teams this century, which I absolutely think that they are.
That's how champions respond. That's how champions
respond, dude. That's how champions respond. And everybody who tried to discredit the Denver Nuggets, Logan, even if they do lose this series, which at this point I really don't think they will, but who knows? Ant is playing like a god right now. This defense is still amazing. But I do think Denver's going to win this series. But even if they were to lose, it would be against a legitimately great Minnesota team that I would then probably pick over the field. That's certainly how I felt after game 2. I guess we'll see where things go from here. The point is, this is an awesome, awesome Minnesota team with a dude who is playing as well as anybody on the planet and a defense that is as good as any that we've seen over the last couple of decades. And to look at 2 games and say, oh, well, these guys are frauds. Let's revisit last year, which was a dominant title run. Let's revisit Jokic's resume, a 3-time MVP in the last 4 seasons. In my opinion, the best offensive player ever, who just had probably the best pure offensive run that we've ever seen. Like, let's just throw all of that out because of 2 games. You look like a fool right now. You look like a fool because this is like one of the most impressive moments from the best player alive and from the defending champs that they've had. They didn't face adversity like this last year. They didn't face a team like this last year. And look how they're responding when things got tough. It's just absolutely outstanding. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Then on the other side, we'll talk about the Knicks-Pacers game, that was quite a blowout in favor of Indiana. We are also going to briefly discuss the NBA draft lottery, the Atlanta Hawks shockingly getting that number 1 pick. We'll talk a little bit about what they might do with that after some quick words from DraftKings. The 82-game preseason is in the books, and it's finally time for the real season. Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code NERDS only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
So, Logan, Pacers-Knicks had been a pretty epic series through 3 games. 3 really exciting down-to-the-wire contests, and then this game was over within minutes, basically. What did this one say to you?
This hurts my heart saying this. Like, I don't think the Knicks, I wouldn't take the Knicks to win another game in this series, man. I love the New York Knicks so much with all of my heart. Jalen Brunson is my beautiful shining boy. I just think it's a little too much to overcome right now, man. No OG, no Randall, no Mitchell Robinson, no Bojan Bogdanovic. I think it's just too much to overcome for the Knicks at this point. Like, it was tough early, dude. Like you said, Brunson wasn't on, and then we got to see the Knicks offense and what they looked like sin OG Anunoby and with the B team running stuff, and it was these long, drawn-out possessions with a nasty shots, and it just led to the defense getting dogged too. Bad closeouts, bad rotations, poor effort. First half, they can't hit anything. 2-18 from deep. It's ugly. I just the offensive creation gap is so large between this team and Indiana. I don't think the Knicks have any answers. And they asked Tibbs, man, it was funny. They asked him, how is this lineup doing it with all these backups in? And he goes, man, my starting lineup is my bench. Like, I got the whole B team in here. Mm-hmm. I really felt like it was over when Jericho Sims got put in and got that 8-second violation and looked like a kid who had never touched a basketball before, man. That was tough. I never want to count out New York with their energy and their effort and their defensive culture and what Jalen Brunson can do as a superhero, but I really think these are just too many injuries to keep going. The OG Anunoby loss is the biggest one to me that just sticks out, especially with what he does defensively. There's nobody that can match up with Pascal Siakam and can switch on to Miles Turner and can just wreck the game defensively. You don't have that guy, and that's a huge blow. And then on the other end, you don't have a guy who can attack mismatches and help Brunson carry the load. Like Carson, they turned to Josh Hart creating, man. Hey, I love Josh Hart, man. I'm a big Josh Hart guy. When you're turning to him and Precious Achiuwa DHOs and pick and rolls, it's over, brother. There's just nothing more. We can't go on. And the offensive limitation at the start led to the defense kind of putting their heads down and not giving you that same New York Knicks effort. And then Tyrese Haliburton said and everything. You're draining threes in your face. You just get demoralized early. And I think this is a wake-up call. I'm not saying the Knicks aren't going to have any competitive games. I expect a lot more fight from this team over the next two. But I just don't think they can win it, man. I think Indiana is so good offensively, and they've got such an advantage now that they can get up tempo and get on these runs off of New York misses. I just think they're overwhelmed, man. I'm so disappointed that this is likely where the road is going to come to an end. But I really expect Indiana to close this thing out and head to the conference finals. I just think this is too much for Brunson and New York to overcome, man. I don't like flipping on my picks in series. This is the first one that I'm going to do it. I'm flipping to Indiana in 6.
So I'm not going to be as final about this as you are, because I actually didn't think that this was all that surprising an outcome. In fact, I want to shout out my dad, because before this game tipped off, he was like, Indiana's going to win this in a blowout. He was just like, they're not going to have the energy to fight as hard as they need to on the road again. And he was right. And I said after last game, like, Indiana's probably going to win game 4, just because game 3 was the one for the Knicks to try to steal, right? When Dante DiVincenzo gives you 35 points, when you shoot over 50% from 3, and ultimately they didn't get the level of Brunson that they would have needed to pull out that win. So it's like a long road to victory for the Knicks, but I don't want to count them out, because we've seen them do a lot of incredible things on the back of Jalen Brunson and then these role players delivering in a big way and playing their asses off. And that was the biggest thing about this game. Like, it was just a hapless effort from the Knicks. We can talk about their obvious personnel limitations, which was absolutely a factor, but they had the same personnel as they did in game 3. Like, this was a game where their issues just compounded and compounded. And also, as you say, like, they couldn't make a shot. This has actually been a really good spot up shooting team. Now, they take some shots that certainly aren't good in the first half of this game, but also Indiana can't miss. Of course, that doesn't account for the 32-point difference, but that accounts for a chunk of it. And then you think about the fact that this was the worst transition defensive performance that we've seen from the Knicks. Indiana had 38 transition points in this game, was just relentlessly pushing, and the Knicks weren't getting back. They weren't bringing the energy defensively that we're used to. They end up winning the battle on the offensive glass, but when this was actually a game for about 18 minutes, Indiana was dictating the offensive glass more. It was Isaiah Jackson who was going up and getting those extra possessions. They did a really bad job on TJ McConnell early in this game. They just couldn't stay in front of him. And then again, the issues just compounded. Like, okay, great. So we can't get a bucket. Jalen Brunson isn't on immediately, and we start running possessions through other guys, and that's just immediately going to be a no-no. And now we're down 20 points, and Josh Hart gets lazy with an inbound, and that leads to a steal. Like, it just wasn't close to the effort that you need from the Knicks. Now, they do have clear basketball issues here. For example, the loss of OG is absolutely devastating because of the fact that it forces them to either choose between playing Precious, who is not good for your spacing as an unskilled 4, or you have to try these small ball looks that they were able to close out game 3 with, although they lost that game, but like, they weren't absolutely punished in terms of mismatch attacking, as we discussed. But in this game, it's like, oh boy, we're guarding the TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin pick and roll with Josh Hart playing drop. Like, I mean, that's the easiest lob over the 6'4" drop defender to the hyper athletic Obi Toppin you're ever going to see. Siakam is going at Josh Hart, and he is just toasting him in single coverage, and the Knicks don't have options. You can't play Jericho Sims, Logan. Like, he's not a rotation level NBA player. It's the reason that you have to go down 4 dudes before you finally turn to him in these playoff settings. But the biggest thing to me is that Jalen Brunson just like has to be a superstar. He has to be the best player on the floor by a good bit for the Knicks to win, which I don't think is impossible. But the question is just, okay, is he healthy enough for that to happen? Because he just wasn't separating early in this game. And I absolutely think Nesmith will do a better job on him than Nembhard did. Like, we totally saw that in game 3. He's bigger, he's longer, he's more athletic, he's a better perimeter defender, period, point blank. but Brunson just didn't have it from the beginning of this game. And if Jalen Brunson doesn't have it and you're down OG Anunoby and you're down Mitchell Robinson, like, of course you're not going to win a basketball game like that. You're not going to be competitive in a basketball game like that. So they just have to be perfect. Like, that's the reality. They don't have margin. Indiana has a way easier offensive formula. They have way more quality available basketball players, and they play at this super fast pace where it's like they're just going to try to wear you down. But if Brunson's amazing, if the Knicks do dictate the effort categories, like we know that they have, if they do deliver as spot-up shooters at the level that we know that they're capable of, like, they still have a chance. The OG absence is beyond devastating, dude. Beyond devastating. And if there is any way that he can play in game 5 or game 6, like, that dude needs to be on the floor for this Knicks team to look anything close to what they did throughout the first 8 games of this playoff run. But I wouldn't entirely count them out, because I do think Brunson is that great. And I do think we've seen them dominate the effort categories in a way that is really, really rare.
I mean, I can't, like I said, the Knicks have that, the Knicks factor.
They're clearly the underdog.
They are now, but
Indiana just has way more talent on the floor.
That's where I think it's personnel issues. I think the Pacers really found something with Aaron Nesmith on Jalen Brunson. Like, I think life is just going to be so hard on Brunson the rest of this series. He has been defending him immaculately like these past 2 games. There are severe offensive limitations around Brunson. You got to hope for outlier shooting performances from DiVincenzo, from Hart. And my final thing is what you mentioned, Carson, the wear and tear. I think it's a lot on these Knicks players, and the Pacers don't look as tired. Like, that is the final component to this, to me, of why I'm ready to kind of tuck the Knicks into bed, is the Pacers have so many guys in the rotation that they can play. Nobody's super gassed at this point in the playoffs. I think the Knicks are a little bit. I think it's taken them so much to get to this point, and we've already sacrificed 4 players, you know, whether it was in the playoffs or before. They're down so many guys. You're asking these guys to play so hard for so much of this game. And that's why I'm ready. I don't know if we can expect a superhuman effort from New York, because I think they're tired. And the Pacers can give that effort every single play because they've got all these guys that they can turn to. If it's Nembhard, if it's McConnell, and you say they got to guard the Knicks better. I mean, excuse me. The Knicks have to guard McConnell better. I don't think they can, man. I think TJ McConnell's going to get whatever he wants, man. TJ's balling. He's a really good player. I just think they're overwhelmed, and the effort category is where I draw my final line with the Knicks, and why I count them out is just I don't know if we can expect it with how much. I think they're tired, man. I think they're tired.
They definitely look tired in this one. They just didn't have it in this one, and I don't know that being able to go a legitimate 9 deep like the Pacers can has ever been more relevant in a playoff series. Like, that's not how playoff rotations work, right? You go 8 deep, maybe in a really important series, you might even go 7 deep. The Knicks, dude, have been going like 6.5 deep, but now they're just at the point where they've lost too many quality players. And again, having to keep up with this pace makes that all the more devastating. The Pacers look way fresher. Life is way easier. Hallie's found his rhythm. Siakam, you feel like, can have an even more pronounced impact. They're a really good shooting team that is getting a lot of good looks from beyond the arc right now, a lot of good transition looks. I definitely think New York has to check a lot more boxes. All I'm saying is, Logan, we're at a talent deficit last series. Now, much less so because they had OG on the floor, and OG is by far their second best and second most important player. I'm just not going to entirely count them out. But obviously, this is a very discouraging performance for the Knicks.
Are you sticking with them?
Don't make me change my pick.
Okay. I am one of the biggest Knicks supporters.
What do I think is the most likely outcome?
Yeah,
that the Pacers win, but I don't think it's over.
Okay, I'm going to take the Pacers in 6. I think they finish this thing off in these next 2 games.
That would be a real bummer for the Knicks, dude. Just because, like, to fight to the point that they're at, considering all the losses they had already suffered, like, what an incredible story. What an incredible moment. They need Brunson to be a superhero. Like, they just really, really do. So it's a lot to ask, especially when the dude is dealing with a bad foot. We'll see if they can keep the Disney movie going, man. I mean, it has been a Disney movie. It has been a miracle up to this point. Speaking of miracles, Logan, we're going to take a step outside the playoff realm just for one moment here, because the Atlanta Hawks, with a 3% chance of getting the first overall pick, secured it in the NBA draft lottery today We know that this is not the strongest class. In fact, it's the weakest class that we've seen in several years, at least. We've seen a lot of really good classes, but this is one that is lacking in the same sort of clear star talents that we've been seeing. But that's big for the Hawks, Logan. A team that has been sort of stuck in basketball purgatory, where they went in on this second star in Dejounte Murray, and they had their foundational piece in Trae Young, and yet you stagnate over these last couple years. You're just thoroughly mediocre. How much does this change things for them, having this number 1 overall pick?
It's pretty huge. I mean, I think they can get a building block on the defensive side. My number 1 pick, if I was Atlanta, I would probably – it depends on if they're going to keep Trae. You know what I mean? I think this is the enticing part to Trae.
Thing, like, right?
Exactly. I'm definitely moving Dejounte Murray for whatever I can get. I just don't – I think we've seen enough to know that this fit doesn't work. He can go be a valuable asset for another team. I'm going to try to find another role player that fits alongside Trae. If they hold on to Trae Young, which, again, I am dangling that like a carrot to Trae. Hey, Trae, we're going to get you somebody else that can play here. I would take Sarr. And the reason being is I think Sarr is in a really valuable mold in basketball nowadays. Like, you see guys like Chet Holmgren, Evan Mobley go at the top of the draft class, and he's in that same kind of mold in the way he impacts the game. Now, I want to be clear about something. I think Sarr is definitively on a different level as a prospect than those guys. I think those guys are home run hitters. Big time, we got to get these guys. Sarr is nowhere near as refined as Chet. I don't even think he's as refined as Mobley. Like, those guys are on a different level of NBA ready. But I mention those because I think he's in the same archetype physically, right? He's a really big, fluid guy, 7'1", 224 pounds, 7'5" wingspan. He's a baby. He's super young, born in 05, 18 years old. And he's a game changer.
He's
on
freshly
that end.
19 now. But yeah, he's really
19.
young.
I have his birthday listed here too. Yeah, his birthday.
Well, you are illiterate, so who could blame you?
I am illiterate. I can't read. It's one of my biggest pitfalls as a podcaster, man. It would change the podcasting game if I could read a sentence. Also,
you've had to overcome a lot. That's why you keep just guessing that Alex Caruso plays for the Celtics.
I was just about to mention, did you know that Alex Caruso plays for the Celtics? Thank you for reminding everyone.
I learn something new every episode.
I like Sarr a lot, though. And to be clear, his birthday's later this month, so he'll be 19. May 26th. May 26th, he will be 19. We can throw a party. Sarr is really fluid. He's really mobile for a guy this size, and I love his instincts and his positioning. I love his switchability on the perimeter, and I like his offensive game a little bit. I think he's a decent playmaker for a guy his size, but he's got a long way to go offensively, and that's going to be the struggle. His hands, his touch, finishing, filling out his frame, like, it's very Mobley-esque. And again, I want to be clear. I like Mobley a lot more. Like, I think his positioning, his instincts were a lot further along than Sarr's, but they're comparable. The biggest thing that I'm worried about with Sarr is just his intensity a little bit, his mentality. I think he can be a little passive. I worry about his effort a little bit, and that's the only thing that really concerns me. But I think he's definitively the best prospect in this class in terms of his ceiling as a defensive anchor and what he could be defensively, and then just being valuable on the other end as a really long, tall, fluid athlete, big play finisher. He's going to be impactful from the minute he enters the league. I do think he's got a far way to grow, but I think he's the guy to take. There's just nobody else in this class that I go, man, they would fit well alongside Trae, better than him. There's no guys that stick out to me that their skill sets are more valuable than Sarr's immediately. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of guys I like in this class, and I think that this class, I think it is the worst class in a couple of years, but I still think it's good. There are very good players in the lottery, and there's going to be a lot of players that teams are going to be happy with. But at the top end, I do think it's less. But nobody else fits better, man. I think you get Trae, his star center big man, and you let them go to work together. Sarr, to me, is the pick for Atlanta.
I think Sarr is the pick, no matter what they decide to do with Trae. I do think that he would be a nice complement to Trae just in terms of athletic pick and roll finisher, guy who on the back line can clean up for some of the defensive shortcomings that the Hawks as a whole have at the point of attack. And I do like him. He's one of the few guys, maybe the only guy in this class actually, where I see all-star upside. Now, he is raw, and absolutely, I agree with you in the sense that he is in the mold of the Mobleys and the Chets, but is clearly 2 tiers below that, I would say. Like those guys just had shown way more offensive skill in terms of playmaking, in terms of jump shooting, especially in Chet's case, of course, in terms of ball handling. I mean, Chet's a level up, and then you have Mobley, and then you have Sar a bit lower down. But I do like his frame. I think he's already in a solid place physically, but I think he'll continue to get better there. I think, again, he's a guy where it's like similar to Chet Mobley, not a great rebounder necessarily at this stage, but I think he can improve there. And then, as you say, he guards well in space, really good shot blocker, elite size. I like his short roll passing. I expect him to be a capable floor spacer. We'll see. He shoots 30% from deep on decent volume, 71% from the line. I think mechanically he's okay, and clearly that's a priority. And he's got a little bit of mid-range touch. He's a capable ball handler. I don't love his body control and touch around the rim on non-dunk finishes, but this is a flawed draft class. Like we've talked about everybody else. You're mostly looking for high-end role players. The Reed Shepherds, the Donovan Klingons, those guys could go top 5, and neither of them have super high ceilings, but they do have high floors. Sar, I think, does have a higher ceiling because of his athleticism, but I would expect him to be like a high-end defensive big with upside to be a nice, versatile offensive big. He's never going to be a dominant offensive force, but I think he can be a good athletic rim finisher, a capable floor spacer, a good short roll passer. He can be good there. And he is very young. I think, though, it probably makes more sense for Atlanta to trade Trae just because of the fact that there's such an intuitive fit with the Spurs. If I were the Spurs, I would do it in a second. I think Trae and Wemby, like immediately as a core that is going to lead to titles, like just having that sort of seamless pick and roll creator who can make life so easy on Wemby offensively, and then having the generational all-time great defensive talent behind Trae, where it's like, you know that you're going to be good there, right? The Hawks have never been able to anchor a good defense around Trae. Part of that is on him, but also part of that is just the surrounding personnel has never been very good. Wemby is a one-man defensive wrecking crew in a way that is special throughout NBA history. So I think it's just such an intuitive fit on both sides of the ball. And I still really think Trae's great. I think Trae gets ragged on too much, but that would be the best spot to cover up for his limitations. Absolutely. And to make him like the second best player on your team, right, where he isn't your primary building block, that'd all be ideal. And although I wouldn't like want to give up on him as Atlanta, he's going to be 26 next season. So like you still have time, right? He's not aging out of his prime, not even close. That's why he makes sense for the Spurs, but you're still far away. You're far away because you are just a mediocre basketball team right now. And I love Jalen Johnson. His internal progression isn't going to be the thing to change that. As much as I like Alex Sarr, he's 19. It's going to be several years before he's like a real high impact NBA player. And so to me, if you can go to San Antonio and you can say, give me number 4 this year, give me number 8 this year, give me Keldon Johnson, and then give me whatever cap filler. I don't love Keldon Johnson, but you know, he's still a solid young asset, makes the cap work. I feel like that's probably enough draft capital because we see more draft picks handed out in some of these deals, but they're down the line. Sometimes there's swaps involved. Sometimes there's protections involved. Like, even though this isn't a great draft class, to know just outright, I am getting 1, 4, and 8 within one draft. Like, that's a hell of a jump start to a rebuild, dude. And then you deal DeJounte Murray. You get a couple more firsts there. Now you have Jalen Johnson. Like, I actually think that is the better direction for Atlanta to take. And my first thought was, okay, well, Sarr would be a really nice fit alongside Trae, but I think it takes too long for that to develop. And I do think that they are better served just hitting the hard relaunch because you can get some great assets for Trae.
You can get some great assets, and it opens up a lot for, you know, the Hawks with their young players to just play more. Like, you know, it's a different timeline, but I think it's a timeline they should lean into. There's other young guys I like in Atlanta, like Kobe Buffkin. I like AJ Griffin. Get those guys some more burn. I think it's time. And with the 4th and 8th pick, again, I know many people have harped on it. This isn't a great draft. I think they can get really good players there. Like, if they can get Buzelis or Ron Holland maybe with that 4th pick for a young wing, and then at the 8th pick, maybe you can steal Isaiah Collier. Like, there's a way that Atlanta can really crush and win this draft. And I think there's enough good players here at the top end that, again, you are hitting the reset. You're not going to win a ton of games next year, and that's just a reality. But you have a lot of young assets, and I think you just go in on the young core, let those young guys get burned, figure out who works, figure out who's the best of the bunch, and go into that. I think it's more worthwhile. And like you said, dude, you can get a haul for Trae Young right now, and I think they should capitalize it on, you know, while they can get it.
Yeah, it would just be hard, in my opinion, to sell Trae on, okay, sorry, we traded for the wrong star. That didn't work. Now we're going to go in on getting these young assets, but we want you to stick around. Like, Trae already got that conference finals taste 3 years ago now, Logan. Like, I just think he's going to be in the mode of, bro, I want to be winning. Like, I want to be in a position where we're pushing for contention. And it's hilarious because the Spurs are one of the worst teams in the league this year, and they're one of the youngest teams in the league, and yet still Wemby alone makes you feel like they're way closer because the guy just is ascending at an unfathomable rate, and you would already have two top 25 players on the planet. Like, that just immediately puts you into conversations that Atlanta isn't in right now. And of course, you'd be more willing to wait a year or two for things to develop when it's Victor Wembanyama who you're waiting on, or not even him really, but the roster around them, compared to when it's Alex Sarr. And the Spurs could just go more all in several ways this offseason. Like,
Exactly.
they could overhaul this roster pretty quickly and then be in some totally different conversations. So interesting stuff for Atlanta. Was not expecting them to have this pick, but it's interesting. It's one of the more interesting outcomes. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, Logan?
Naz Reid,
Logan, played, I believe, 19 minutes in this game, 11 points on 5 of 6 shooting. Not his best game, not his worst game, but the Minnesota Timberwolves are now the ones fighting the uphill battle. They're on even footing, but to me, once this Nuggets offense is humming like it is right now, all the pieces are in place. There's a reason that this team was, to us, the presumptive title favorite. There's a reason that they won the title last year. They're just really really hard to throw off their rhythm when they are in rhythm like this. I do wonder what we'll see Minnesota try. Like, they already got a little funky in this game, right? When we saw the 3 big lineup with Naz and Cat and Jokic. Size didn't really affect Jokic. He was giving them buckets anyways. I think that they'll probably send more hard doubles at Jokic next game just because that was so successful in game 2. At the same time, they're less inclined to do that with Gobert on the floor. Also, Denver is shooting so much better. Also, again, like, Jokic knows those looks are coming. That was the final moment of this game, basically. He knew it was coming and he torched you for it. The guy's just a genius. And, like, it's that LeBron thing, dude, where the best player alive, the best offensive player alive, the smartest player alive just figures you out more and more as the series goes along. That's the level Jokic is at right now. That's how he should be treated, with that level of respect, that level of benefit of the doubt. That's just what he's continuing to prove right now. So I do feel really good about Denver's formula down the stretch. For Minnesota, like, unbelievable basketball team. I'm not counting them out, but the momentum is pretty clearly headed in one direction. All right. That's going to do it for us here today, guys. Appreciate all of you tuning in so much. Really hope you enjoyed. If you did, the good news is there is always more Nerd Sesh content. We will be back tomorrow night. We will be back the night after that. And if you want to catch our thoughts on yesterday's games, that is on our YouTube channel, doing a bunch of shows throughout these playoffs. We also have some more in-depth video content. The last video that I did was on the Timberwolves defense in game 2. Ironically, I think the next one is going to be about the Nuggets offense now through games 3 and 4, but expect that within the next day or two. You can listen to the show across audio platforms. You can follow us across social, Instagram and TikTok at Nerd Sesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see our trivia content and to see clips from the show. You can check out our merch if you want. Logan's got the hat on him. That is at thevolume.com. You can join our Discord to chat with the fellas and for a chance to speak to the one and only Matthew Sponhour. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bios. And with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Breber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.